I've never heard this kind of thing. I'd want to talk to him more, or I know somebody else. Because one of the things is, how clear and how directed does your vision really need to be in the beginning? Like, how much flexibility is there and space and time for feeling it out and finding, hey, I actually really am not working and gelling and enjoying these kind of clients and these kind of people who I thought I would. But I haven't had any experience with any others because I've been so focused and so limited.
Welcome to another episode of From Startup to Wunderbrand with Nicholas Kuhner. Welcome back, everyone. And today we have an interesting gentleman called Marc Ryan Rees joining us. Now, Marc hails from Johannesburg originally, I think, but you are now in Cape Town. And we've known each other for quite a few years. We're going to talk about two specific aspects today. We're going to talk about Marc's new business, which is a consultant philosopher business, which I'm sure not many of you have come across. And secondly, we're going to go through a little bit of an exercise of how would you market this kind of business. So we're going to use this as a bit of a case study. But first of all, welcome, Marc.
Cheers. Thanks, Nick.
Now, a lot of folks wouldn't know what a consultant philosopher is. So why don't we start a little bit on your background and talk about how you got to this space, because this sounds like a very ancient profession.
I guess it is, though I'm modernizing it. And I think I'm extra modernizing it or extra ancientizing it, because what the philosophers do now, who are consultants or counseling philosophers, which I don't see myself as, is they really are trying to fill the space in the personal philosophy, the counseling philosophy, as sort of something between life coaches and therapists. And I'm not interested in doing either. And then in the consulting philosophy side of it, what they do is a lot of applied ethics that go into businesses or so on and say, oh, you're doing this right, you're doing that wrong, helping with mission statements, and also doing ethics within, let's say, it's very popular within the medical field. People would do it in the military and corporate and so on. Yes, I'm somewhat interested in that. But for me, I think that there's, by doing philosophy, just having the conceptualization of concepts informed by all the studies done by philosophers is very useful. It's useful for clarifying your ideas, seeing different perspectives, and it can be helpful without having a very strong aim at either being therapeutic or moralistic.
So
and
we'll go.
I don't have a single client yet. I've been doing it informally for a few years, and then my wife said, no, you have to do this properly now. And so I've been doing it for friends and friends of friends, and now I'm starting up the consultancy. Before this, I've been doing stand-up comedy for a few years. Also incredibly artistically very successful. I'm amazing. But career-wise, it's cost me more than what it's brought in. And I have a background in philosophy. I studied that at university. I did my master's. I chose not to do my PhD, which I still think was a wise decision. I'm not sure whether I regret it or not. It's mostly something for if you want a career in academia, or if you want to impress people who don't really know enough people with PhDs to know how unimpressive it is.
Well, just for those of you who don't believe that Marc was a stand-up comedian, he's also he's also quite pithy. And here's one of his jokes that I managed to lift off Twitter, which says, water buffalo isn't just another name for a hippopotamus. Apparently, water buffaloes are a type of land-based cow. They are not amphibious. They drink... They drink normal amounts of fluid. There isn't even an African fable about how they got their name. So that's one of the marvelous examples. There's another one which I really loved, which was, don't hate yourself for everything. You've got to be specific. So there are a couple of really...
It's funny when I say it out loud.
It is.
No. It's also on stage. You need the passion. You need to put some emotion behind it. So, for instance, I need to be enraged that people have misclassified water buffalo.
Exactly. Okay. So
which I
anyway,
felt at the time when I wrote that. I don't feel that
okay.
now. It would take quite a bit of work to open up those emotions.
Yeah, so I would suggest that everyone goes and has a look at your Twitter account if they'd like a bit of a giggle, because there's some zingers there. But you've gone through a bit of your background, and I want to explain to people what it is that you're actually offering. And when we look at the flyer, the very exciting flyer that you sent to me, it says, "Do you need to talk about philosophy?" And you've got as your descriptor of yourself, professional consulting philosopher for philosophical counsel, study, and rational discussion. Do you have an existential crisis or moral dilemma, want to know the meaning of life, and have concerns about death, metaphysics, and questions of faith, etc.? And I love the etc. at the bottom. This really, I think, is a wonderful flyer. It goes back to sort of the very foundations of marketing communications, and this would fit very well into a newspaper in the early 19th century, I think.
It does. That's kind of what I was going for. I was thinking of calling myself a consulting philosopher, like Sherlock Holmes as a consulting detective. But the URL was already taken, so I changed to consulting philosopher.
And I think you do actually have a pipe.
I do. I've got a huge collection of pipes. Cigars were getting too expensive, so I decided to start smoking pipes, and then I started collecting them, and that ended up being even more expensive. I haven't smoked in a while. I do miss it.
I suppose that's the challenge of having children in the house. Now, what I think we should have a look at is try to understand. You mentioned that you have got 0 paying clients at the moment, and part of the aim of this call is to see, okay, how do we get to a stage where we can make this a functional business? It's not really going to be a business because it's a one-man show, a one-man band, really. Let's just have a look at what your long-term aims are for this, because I think it's very important. I mean, I know you're in philosophy, but now we have to get down to KPIs, which is your key performance indicators, and figure out what is your goal for this. So let's start talking about why you decided, other than your wife haranguing you and getting you and saying you need to do this full time. Why do you think people should trust you when it comes to being a consultant philosopher?
Why they should trust me? Well, that's a really tough one, because I think first they have to know what a consulting philosopher does. And letting them know that, I think, is important. Trust. So there are a few ways. There's one through accreditation. I've got my master's. I guess it would be cool to say PhD on there, or prof before my name, but I don't really want to be in the academy. And the other is accreditation. There's the American Philosophical Counselors Association and the National Consulting Philosopher. There are various ones of those. I don't think anyone really knows of them down here. And I'm not sure whether I want to invest in becoming an affiliate or associate of them yet, until I'm sure that this thing has got some momentum.
Mm.
If that's what it takes just to put it on my business card, then yeah, sure, it might look good, but I don't know if there's any meat behind it, if it really means anything. And something important for me is authenticity. And one of the things that has been holding me back is this kind of sense of doubt. I don't ever want to have someone come to me, say, I'd like the service, and then I don't provide value to them. And this isn't just about my reputation. It really is about my sense of self-worth. It would mortify me. It's inevitably going to happen that somebody is mistaken about the product they'll be receiving. And then they go in and they get it, and they're like, this isn't really what I was looking for. And I would have felt like a failure, even though I guess technically it wasn't one. And I know this isn't unique to me. This happens in all industries, everybody with product. Sometimes people just don't get what they were looking for, and they feel upset by it. And I think that in many ways, I'm trying to fill a gap for people who maybe went to a life coach or a psychologist, and they were like, that isn't exactly what I was looking for. Maybe a philosopher, that kind of rational conversation and interaction about someone who speaks in the abstract, relates to myself personally, is what I'm looking for. And similarly, with the more business consulting side, they were like, we weren't actually looking for a motivational speaker. We were looking for somebody who could actually help give real insight in the situation that we're materially in now.
You've picked up one of the main challenges there, which is the aspect of education, so creating awareness. And when it comes to individual businesses or consultancies like yourself, it's very difficult for you to educate an entire market. So to explain to people exactly what you do, you should really try and rely on what other companies or other folks have been doing. Are there some good examples of, let's just not say competitors, because they're not really going to be competitors in your space, but of other individuals or consultancies that do what? Have you seen another company or person that does something the way you want to do it?
Yes, I have. Not exactly in the way I do it. I think their business model is probably the same way. The content and personality is obviously different because they're different and their philosophical approaches are different. But there are quite a few people, not here in South Africa where I am, and I really like part of the whole reason. There's a few reasons why I'm doing this at all. One is that I love philosophy, I like conversation, I like human interaction. I find it very stimulating and rewarding. Face-to-face rather than Zoom calls is something I quite like. However, that ends up being a local thing. It's geographically limited. And there aren't many down here. There are a few who do, and they've got different approaches. I know somebody who does philosophical counseling. She's got very much a sort of warm, cozy therapy vibe to her because that's what she's like. It's a bit abstracty and woo-woo kind of feeling. Other people have got a very strongly academic vibe about them. And others have also got some of this rogue philosopher. Most of them, I think the very successful ones have started adjacent larger things, such as an association that, it sounds weird, it sounds very wankerish because it doesn't reach out to the public. I'm the head of the Philosophical Consulting Association. And then they've got that association that puts out the material and the talks and whatever. But there are people who do it, and mostly they've got their website and they've built up their clientele slowly, I guess, where they consult with businesses and they do personal consultations.
You picked on a couple of interesting points there. One is that you're not starting from scratch, so you do have some examples of other folks whose process or way of doing business you can copy, but you've already set some boundaries around the type of business that you want to do, which is that it's going to be face-to-face, so in person. So you are narrowing yourself down to the Cape Town market. And this is quite helpful. And I'm glad that you have set up these firm boundaries because it makes it much easier for you to market yourself and to get to your market. Because doing Facebook ads, doing Google ads, doing mass communications for your type of business isn't going to work because you've only got a limited amount of hours and you want to do them in person. It might come to a stage where you might need to adjust that where you do Zoom calls, you do digital calls, because there might be folks in other geographic regions who may want to get involved with you but can't get to Cape Town. Or you can create a special offer where they can come to Cape Town, go to the wine route, philosophize on the top of Lion's Head or something, and meet with you. So there's some options like that. But I would just want to go back to the education side. And when I look at your sales message, which is, do you need to talk about philosophy? I think it's potentially too broad for the market. A lot of people who need the services that you are offering probably don't know what philosophy means and how it can help them. So one of the ways that, and something we've been doing in class right now, which has been a fascinating exercise, is about creating a landing page. Now, this is probably the simplest piece of marketing advice that I'm going to give you, because you need to explain a couple of fundamentals. There's got to be a headline which is aimed at an individual. So you might have in your head individuals who've got specific issues that they want to discuss. But when you're starting out like you are now, you can't cover a huge audience. You've got to really focus in on one or two individuals or a very key set of individuals. And you need to say, are you struggling with understanding your place in the world, for example? And then I'd say, oh, yes, that speaks to me. It then draws me down lower into the page into something about my current situation. And does this explain you? Do you wake up at night screaming? Do you wake up in the morning not knowing why you're doing your work, etc., or you hate your life and your children, etc.? And then we do a belief deconstruction, okay? And then we go into, you're not alone. There are other people who are going through this kind of issue. And then we talk about the desired outcome. So you need to tell them what they are going to get out of this. You will get a deeper understanding of your reason for being. You will get more clarity in your life, etc. So you're starting to build up the challenge and then some of the outcomes they can expect. And then you tell them their new paradigm. So now imagine a life full of joy or whatever that particular issue is. And then you'll explain how it works. Okay, so now that you've got them down these steps, you're going to be saying, okay, how does this work? We set up a one-on-one consultation. You come here and sit on my couch, or we go for a walk in Rondebosch and we discuss while looking at beautiful plants, etc. So you explain exactly how it works. And then you'll talk a little bit about yourself, saying why you started this, and give them a bit of a personal message about why you are the person that they should be engaging with. And then finally, a call to action, because we want people to, your aim right now is to get business. So do we want to get them to sign up to a mailing list where they can start reading up on philosophical issues? So they're just in the beginning phase of their journey of thinking, I'm interested in philosophy. Maybe it's just signing up to your newsletter, and once a week you send a newsletter out, or once a month you send a newsletter out on a specific topic. Is it a call to action which says, book a time with me now, to schedule a time with me, or whatever other sort of call to action you have? But I feel a landing page for you would be very good based on your specific target market. So people who are interested in, let's have a look here again. Do you have an existential crisis? Do you have a moral dilemma? And maybe that moral dilemma side is something that people are interested in as a business, for example, or as a politician. And you can focus in on a specific target market and create a landing page for them. The landing page is just one piece of content. You can then send this on Instagram, on TikTok, on LinkedIn, on any of your other channels, and lead people to this page where they can read a little bit more about you. So this is literally the cheapest way, and I think the easiest way to educate people about your particular offering and how you can help them. And it's got to be very personal, because offering is extremely personal. And you want to make the offer to them extremely personal, not make it feel like you're just solving generic philosophical problems. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. And I think it also sounds, although it makes sense, it doesn't sound easy. It sounds actually quite tricky to get all those points and all that information concisely in a single on a single page. I think some of it will probably have to be insinuated, if not explicit. And I mean, yeah, that's brilliant, Nick. I see people know what philosophy is. I mean, I kind of know they don't, but I do overestimate.
Yeah, and again, you are not alone, because everyone in whichever industry they're in thinks that what they know is so obvious, everyone should know it. So we get very close to our content, we get very close to our area of expertise. And you've got to write it as if you're speaking to a 10-year-old. So you've got to write this. Don't make assumptions. What is an existential crisis? That's a big word. Most people have heard it, but haven't used it in their daily vocabulary. And the nice thing is, Ryan, is that I'm going to send you a link to a a template for this, which is 100% free. So it is not complicated. It will help you, it will guide you through this particular process. And I have to say that this isn't my concept and my idea. I've recently trained my class on developing landing pages, and I came across this marvelous resource. So I'm going to share that with you, and it will take you through the entire process of how to do this and where you can get some additional insights into what questions your market are asking for. So you have said, this is what I can offer, and you are throwing it against the wall like spaghetti, hoping it's going to, something's going to stick. What you can do with your own time is go into things like Reddit, go into things like YouTube, and go and have a look at the comment section on videos of people talking about existential crises and see what are the main things people are talking about or asking for more advice on. You can then start using those as thought starters, either for blog articles or for the kind of questions that you put into your landing page, or the kind of content you put into your tweets, into your Instagram posts and activities like that. So all of these things, it's just about structuring it now, and that's what we're going to help you with. The next step really is getting this out to your preferred market. And you've got a home base, obviously, where you're going to be operating from, or are you going to be doing these engagements in a coffee shop or in the comfort of somebody's home? Where's your place of business, Mark?
I know one coffee shop in Orbs where it won't be at the coffee shop. They've got a private section offices upstairs that are only going to be ready at the end of the year, that I'll be able to like book for an hour or so. Very nice there. I actually bumped into a guy recently that's starting up these private pods in coffee shops, which is not my preferred because they're quite sterile, where two people can have a meeting and you just book it through an app. But I do want somewhere where that's private and cozy. I don't mind going to people's places where they work or nearby them. It's always good to get out of the house. But I do want a spot that is cozy and private and isn't at home, where I can meet with people regularly.
Yeah. The reason I ask this is one of the tools that you need to use is a Google business profile. This is free from Google and is something you have to set up. And it does help, obviously, if you've got a physical location that you use. But this is where you can put in your booking links. This is where people, if they're searching on Google, will type in philosophy consulting and up will come Mark's page. And they'd be able to see reviews. They'd be able to see information on that. So I would recommend that
nobody is going to type in philosophical consulting. I just don't imagine it's something anyone would search for. They might see it and say, hey, that's exactly what I need.
Well, in real time, I'm going to type it up. Philosophical consulting or counseling. So what comes up is philosophical consulting, philosophical counseling. Yeah, not terribly much. And philosophical consultant. But if I type on philosophical consulting or counseling, they're not millions of companies that come up, and obviously I'm in Norway, so I'll see some slightly different things to you. But that's one of the first places that you need to start, is type in the kind of search terms that you think people are going to be using or that you would use, and see, is it coming up? Do you need to perhaps rename your service so that it becomes slightly more searchable? So those are some of the aspects we would look at. So that's just going into some of the basics. I'm going in a bit of a roundabout here because we were going to talk about brand, but I think this is not going to be a branding exercise, because when I go through brands, I will typically, especially for somebody of a business of your size, we'd go through something called a brand on a page. And what it does is it really keeps it nice and simple. So maybe this is an exercise we can go through, actually. So, Mark, if you think about your values, let's start with that. So what are the values of you? Because this is a you business. So what are your values?
Can you give me an example of what you mean by values?
Okay. So this is pretty much what you stand for and what drives you. So the reason that you are in this business, it's obviously not just to make money. Otherwise you'd have gone into another type of business. But Is it about changing the world? Is it about honesty? Is it about aspiration? Elements like that.
It's really, I think a lot of it is about, there's an intellectual exhilaration that I get and which I'd like to share with people. When I do philosophy, when I think about these things, I get insights, I uncover stuff, and I find it very exciting to clarify my thoughts and also the conversations I'd have. So I think put that concisely, I would say rational intellectual discussion. But it's a tough one because, saying that word like rational or intellectual, the way I use it, especially in philosophy, when we talk about things being reason or rationality, everyone thinks it's very dry. But it isn't, we talk about like wonder in the world and things that matter and meaning of life. So that is it. But I would have to describe it differently. I'd have to find different terms that really are loaded with the feelings I have about it.
You've already picked up one beautiful word there, which is wonder. So I would have wonder as one of your values, or one of the terms that you use in your business. And as you said, this is not a process that you can finish in 1 hour. This is something where you need to ruminate a little bit and think about what sort of values you are aspiring to in your consultancy. So that being rational, wonder, I think you had another one, not exuberance. It was, you mentioned a nice thing about the feeling that you felt when you're doing this.
Exhilaration.
I'm filling this in as we go, so that at the end I can hand something over to you. If you look at a company like Apple and Tesla, so these are the old chestnuts. So if you look at Tesla, for example, these are guys who are just balls to the wall. These are guys who are we're hitting limits. We're trying to take humanity to the next level. So their values are exploration. Their values are technology, focus on technology. Their values are on pushing the limits. So those are the kind of values we want to extract from them. The next question is, what market are we in? So are we in the self-help market? Because this is all just about, all we're trying to do with this brand on a page basically is filter out everything that is unnecessary so that you can focus on what is the most important for you. Because there's so many things that are going to be able to distract you that we really just want to, this process is to filter out everything that you don't need. So when we talk about what market we're in, could you clearly enunciate what market you're in?
No.
Okay.
Was that clear?
Yeah. So that's good, because this shows you why you're struggling to get clients and you're struggling to get going. Because if you don't know what market you're in or what you're selling, it's very difficult to sell it, right?
I do have an idea of who I think would be interested in the product.
So we get to that, but I want to know, out of all the different services and offerings out there, we need to clarify what we're in. Because remember, customers, when they've got a need, have got very clear need that they're looking for, and they're going to go searching out businesses and consultants that solve that need. You need to think quite clearly in terms of what market are you in. Is it self-help? Is it self-expression? We need to clarify that, and that's something that perhaps you need to think on a little bit. Okay, so
I do think it would be close to self-help, but it's not for. I imagine the people coming would be somebody who, there'd be a few. There'd be some who have been to therapists of various kinds and found that's not what they were looking for. Maybe they didn't really want therapy, and then people who like to have these kind of discussions, these philosophical talks, but they don't have anyone to talk to about it, or at least nobody who is willing to sit down for an hour at a time every week or every couple of weeks and research it and really engage with it, and who's an expert at it. And so that's on the personal side. And then, of course, there's also the corporate side. I've had some ideas for that, and I'm not quite sure where it would go to. I wouldn't mind if they've got some kind of budget to spend by the end of the year and they're like, let's hire someone.
I'm not sure what category that goes into, but why this categorizing it in self-help is useful. If you think about the Amazon bestseller list, or you look at going into a library, you go into the section that you're looking for and you exclude everything else. And because it makes your searching much easier. So that's what you're doing here. So the market you're in basically is self-help. Okay, so now the self-help department, we need to filter that down even more. And the next step in this would be, what is your positioning in this self-help market? And the positioning here, I would almost put at, what is your pricing point? Are you an exclusive? Are you for billionaires? Are you for the man on the street? Are you for tech entrepreneurs? Because if you look at the market that you are operating in, there are going to be different types of self-help consultants and potentially philosophers that are aiming at certain markets. And the positioning helps you filter out how many people are potentially your customers. Because if you're saying I'm going after billionaires and I charge $1 million a session, you're going to have a small target market. If you're saying I'm going to go after everyone who's got a degree, your market is much, much bigger and probably too complex for you to navigate. If you said, I'm going after CEOs or founders or politicians, then it narrows down your market. And within that, you're going to say, okay, what type of politicians that are starting out, politicians that have hit their peak, politicians that are at the top of their game and are now trying to discover what next, how can they adjust their messaging. You don't only have to speak to those people, but it's very important to be known for something. So you've got to have what I call, what is your Big Mac? What are people coming to you for?
Yeah, that's something I need to think about. I can't answer it right now, of course.
Yeah.
I have, from the corporate point of view, I do have ideas. One of the things is articles and talks on topics from a philosophical perspective. The articles are, you write them, you send them to specific trade magazines that are looking for content. I say, you print this, you put my name and contact details at the bottom. And they said, oh, yes, great. Our writers are on holiday. We really need this. Thank you so much. And I'm like, thank you for putting my name out there. And the other are talks. I've actually got a talk that I've put together. I'm still going to book rooms and get people in. It's a talk on fear of death from a philosophical perspective. I know one of the venues, there are going to be a lot of people in the medical profession, psychiatrists and psychologists and neurologists and all that kind of stuff are going to be, would probably see that and hopefully attend. I'd love it if people from public or other industries came in, but just where that will be put out, they're the ones who are likely to see that. My idea, as I imagined it, was I give those talks and people are like, hey, this guy has something to say. That's really interesting. I've never heard this kind of thing. I want to talk to him more, or I know somebody else who I think would really benefit from chatting to him more, or having him do this presentation elsewhere. Because one of the things is, how clear and how directed does your vision really need to be in the beginning? Like, how much flexibility is there and space and time for feeling it out and finding, hey, I actually really am not working and gelling and enjoying these kind of clients and these kind of people who I thought I would. But I haven't had any experience with any others because I've been so focused and so limited. And that seems, I don't know if that's a setback or not, but there's a way of approaching it so that I can be doing A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H testing all at the same time, feeling it out. Without having, because obviously you can spread yourself too thin and then you don't have a product. What are you and where am I putting all my efforts and my energy, and then nothing at all comes from it.
Absolutely. And again, as you've said, there are a lot of people in the same boat because there are so many opportunities out there. What the point of doing a marketing or branding exercise like this is filtering out opportunities that are not going to get you to where you want to be. This is why we look at values. This is why we look at what market we're in. And excluding certain types of business opportunities is not a bad thing. It's very important when you are starting out to let people know who you are, what you stand for, and what particular problem you can solve. Because if you're too generic, nobody's going to use you. If you're very specific, you are going to get your very specific market, but you're also going to be able to do other markets, because at least you're specialized in something and people know, wow, this guy is a specialist in this. Maybe he can help me in this as well. Versus somebody who's just a generalist. I prefer going in with a very pointy stick or wedge and saying, this is what I'm exceptional at. And then somebody says, I know you're exceptional at that, but this is my problem. Can you do this as well? And you can say, of course. So you won't say no to new business. If you just are waiting for the ocean currents to take you somewhere, you're just going to be floating around the ocean forever and never get to your destination. So I think it's very important that you stick a stake in the ground and say, this is what I stand for. These are the type of clients I want. And if you get other clients and you see, wait a minute, I should have stuck my stick over there because that's where all the fish are, or that's where all the clients are, you can move there. But you won't know unless you stick a stake in the ground and stand for something. And I always give the example of why Hillary Clinton lost the elections to Trump is that Hillary Clinton tried to be loved by everyone and tried to be friends of every single segment in America. And Trump decided, look, 50% are going to hate me, or 49% are going to hate me, 50% are going to love me. I just need to get that 50% plus one. So he knew that a whole bunch of people are never going to vote for him. And he still won. So you don't need everyone to love your offering and everyone to want what you've got. You've just got to focus on those folks who really need you. So I would say if the medical industry is an area that you are getting potential interest from and you're getting potential business from, that might be a good starting point. And become specialized in speaking about specific issues that are interesting to them, and then start adding additional offerings to your basket. Don't be too broad in the beginning, because nobody will trust you or believe that you're good at all of these things. Yeah, it's a tough one. Setting out the foundations is obviously a lengthy process. And there's going to be some pain involved in it, because you're going to have to say no to certain things that you thought you wanted to do. But it will be more helpful to give you a bit more clarity in terms of where your focus and your attention should be. And as somebody with a broad mind like yourself, having focus is extremely important. Otherwise, you're just going to be pulled left, right, and center.
What you say actually does remind me a lot of my experience in comedy, where in stand-up it was people who were doing this broad comedy, and I was like, look, you've got to be funny, but you don't have to be funny to everyone.
Yeah.
And the stuff that I did was pretty niche. It was quite divisive. And I think most people either didn't get it or were a bit lukewarm about it or horribly offended. But there were a few, not a tiny amount, but there were a few. There are a few who absolutely loved it. They liked the dark humor, the impropriety of it, the subtle but strong satire, and so on. And for them, it was really well appreciated.
Yeah, so you've got a real life example there. And those are the people that are going to generate business for you. They will talk to their friends and say, wow, this guy was perfect. Or have you heard about this? Or this guy really is going to solve an issue that you've got. So let's go down to the next step, which is personality. And this is about the differentiation side of your business. So there might be philosophers or self-help folks out there who are perhaps their personality is it being a hippie, or perhaps their personality is like being, what's that chap, the Tate, or what's another one? Their personalities are very brash and abrasive. And there's Jordan Peterson, and there's that guy that American guy with the enormous teeth, who's very big. It will come to me. But what is your personality? Do you bring humor into your sessions? Are you specifically for people who are high flyers? Are you for people who haven't made it yet and are looking to make it? We need to work on what is the personality behind your brand, and that needs to come through in your communications, obviously how you send out your messaging. So that's something that we can work on. So the personality side is quite important. And this comes down into the way that you communicate to your market, basically. And you can have a look at this in terms of car brands. So if you think about, we'll bring the Tesla example, Tesla's young, yuppies, green. Then you think of a Humvee, that is for people who don't, care about the environment. These are guys who want to show off. They're waiting for the end of the world, etc. So you need to set up your personality. Are you a Tesla or are you a Humvee? And what you drive represents you. So somebody comes to you, they are coming to somebody who represents, who will help represent them and their personality. So we'll go into personality a bit later. We touch on target audience. So who are we aiming at? So who is the exact target audience? And this is something that you need to figure out, and we can do a separate exercise on figuring out exactly who this target market is. But you've already narrowed it down to the Cape Town market. You've already got one niche, which is the medical industry, perhaps. But you need to say to yourself, who is my ideal target market? And you need to figure out something called a persona. So you'll create a fake person or persona of who is your ideal customer. And you'll say, this person is Johnny. He's 34 years old, got a business, got a dog, traveled the world, uses these media, has got this degree, and has these challenges. Once you have that picture of a person in mind, similar to in your comedy work, if you know exactly who the perfect audience member, it's much easier to craft communications and messaging to them. And it also helps you filter out where you are going to find those people. So, for example, what comedy club you're going to be going to. You might know that this particular comedy club has this clientele and they're going to hate my stuff. So I'm not going to get booked there because it's not going to work. But this one, this particular comedy club, which is for more edgy comedians, that's where my target market is and where I'm going to get potential business. You need to think of the same thing for your brand. Who is the ideal customer? And it can be a whole bunch of them, but you need to identify, you need to create your perfect customer in your head and then go and find out where do they hang out and what media do they use, what challenges do they have, because this is going to help in terms of what newsletters you write, what posts you put out. Because right now you might be doing a bit of scattershot. Let me talk about this one day. Let me talk about this one day. When you're talking to an individual or a persona, a specific entity, you know what they are feeling today. You know what challenges they've got. You know what they need to make their life better, versus just a scattershot approach trying to create world peace, for example. So the target audience side. And then the next step there would be, what is the key insight about this audience? What is the key driver for them? And you've already got your product offering in terms of people talking about existential crises, moral dilemmas, the meaning of life, worrying about death. Maybe worrying about death is a big issue, and you need to be the guy who talks about worrying about death. And people know that if they want to talk about it, or they want to understand it, or they want to get ready for it, you are the person to talk to. Okay. Does this make sense so long? Is this helping chip down at what you're going to send out to the market?
Absolutely. I'm going to have to not rethink everything, but think more about it. Think more about it with the structure that you've provided me.
And I'll share this with you as well, and I'll share it with our audience as well. It's very simple. It just helps you chisel away at that enormous block of marble to get a beautiful Michelangelo David at the end of it. Then we've got to say, what is the most inspiring and compelling thing we can convey to them? So this is what we call our brand proposition. And I touched on the landing page again. It's that top of the page. Are you worried about death? Let me help you. Let me guide you through some coping steps, for example. So what's the most compelling thing that you can tell this market? And this is where you are creating your Big Mac. So to your point a little bit earlier, where you're worried about losing out on other opportunities or not knowing which one is correct for you. If you go into McDonald's for a Big Mac, but then you see a fillet of fish or you see an Angus have the Monster Mac or some other thing. There are fries, there's Sprite, there's ice cream, there's a whole bunch of other things that you can buy there. But it's not the main reason you went into that McDonald's. You went in for one particular product, but something else caught your eye. Actually, I'm feeling like this today. Yeah, you do have the ability to have variety in your offerings, but they are coming for one thing and you can sell them on something else afterwards. So that's in terms of your brand positioning, that can help a bit there. How do we support what you've said? So we've mentioned these are some things called proof points. So how can they trust that if you say, I'm going to be able to help you with these things, there needs to be some kind of backing for this. And in this case, it's your master's degree in philosophy, which is very relevant. It's your life experience. It's your experience in the comedy world, which everyone knows most of the comedic geniuses are depressed and very deep thinkers. So people will trust that. So you can't not talk about your comedic background and show examples of it, because this will show people that you're a thinker and you're not a lightweight. Okay, so there's that. And then lastly, and something you've done already, which is what is your tone of voice and your visual identity? So the tone of voice is, how do you speak to people? So are you talking to people about death in a dull and dreary way? Or are you saying, death, can you bring humor into some of your communications? And it doesn't have to be slapstick. It can be your type of wit. And then the visual guidelines, if you have a pink logo with roses on it versus your very beautiful sort of Edwardian type that you used, that needs to be consistent across all of your messaging. So on your website, on your TikToks, on your Instagrams, on your Facebook posts, etc. So you want to get some consistency there so that there's a link between what you're saying and how you look and what you're offering them. So that's the basic outline of getting you ready to get yourself out into the market. And it is a process, and that's why people pay money for this, just like they should be paying money for philosophers and consultants. But this should help you filter out the unnecessary from the necessary as you're going through this process. And I believe you're saying by the end of the year, those pods will be ready. I think you should give yourself a goal to have your brand template done, understand who your target market is and what your most compelling offer is to them, and get those landing pages up and running and start educating your potential customers that you are the right solution for them.
I think that the most compelling thing are the insights and the clarity that come from the process of doing the philosophy. You listen to, there's just ideas out there that you hear and you're like, wow, I never thought of it like that before. And there isn't a specific position that I have. It's just a lot of thoughts and philosophy and theories and whatever. You'd hear them and you'd be like, I never thought of it like that, or that is so insightful, or this is cleared up so much. I never distinguished between fear of death and fear of dying. And now that I said it, maybe, oh, look, I'm not actually afraid of death. I'm afraid of the pain and agony of the few moments before that, which makes it no different from many other calamities which might befall me, for instance. And it really isn't meant to be therapeutic. Sure, like a person would go to a person, they might feel a little bit down or a little depressed, and they go to a personal trainer to work their muscles, and they'd go 3 times a week, and that's what the personal trainer is aiming to do, is to get their strength, flexibility, mobility, coordination going. And then afterwards, as a result of that, they feel better and more motivated, energetic and happy. But that's not necessarily what the personal trainer is aiming at and what they're doing. And so with this, yeah, sure, a person probably will feel a lot better about things in their lives after speaking to a consulting philosopher. But my aim is really to engage with the concepts and relate them to how a person is living now, and discuss it and explain it, and do the process of philosophy where we analyze things and bring in new different ideas and develop ideas and clarify stuff.
Well, I mean, the process that we've gone through now is finding out who are those first customers you need to reach out to. So your idea is slowly crystallizing, which is awesome. But now you need to find you need to fish where the fish are. So where am I going to find these customers? What are the hooks that are in my messaging that are going to explain to them that, yes, I'm the right solution for you? And then you need to get them to become paying clients. So you need to also now go into what is your rate? How do you charge? Can they WhatsApp you? How much is a WhatsApp? $50 for a WhatsApp? Do you purely have the one-on-ones? And maybe in terms of building up your profile in this space, start writing more or doing more of these events. I mean, running a business is a big schlep. But if you love it and you enjoy it, then the schlep is worth it. So, yeah, we could do a couple of days worth of coaching and consulting on the brand. But I think I've given you some good starting points. The landing page in terms of clarifying your offer to each of these different markets, I think is going to be extremely important for you. And in terms of what you stand for as Marc Ryan Rees is also important, because that is going to give clarity. It's going to give customers more comfort that you are the right choice for them, and that will help you build your business over time.
Cheers. Thanks so much, Nick.
Yeah. Now tell us a joke.
Yeah, I mean, not to be helpful, but it's always great chatting to you. It's been pleasurable as well as helpful.
One of my favorite Goon Show quotes is after somebody's given this long speech, the person says, "Rubbish, but beautifully said."
That's a good one.
Well, Marc, I hope this has been useful. If anyone else there would like to have a session to discuss how to differentiate yourself, set up your brand, and figure your way through this tough world we live in, give myself a chat. But also, if you need to speak to a consultant philosopher, Marc is ready and waiting. So, Marc, where can I send folks if they'd like to start working with you?
They can go onto my website, which is www.consultantphilosopher.com.
Excellent. So I will put that link in the description so folks can go and have a look at that. And yeah, if anyone's got any suggestions for Marc, you're welcome to message us on Twitter or on our YouTube channel as well. So Marc, it's been a pleasure chatting to you. Have a fantastic day.